I still remember the sound of her suitcase wheels dragging across the hallway floor. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the apartment like a verdict. The walls that had heard our late-night conversations, our quiet dinners, now echoed with nothing but that rolling farewell. She didn't look back when she closed the door, only left the faint smell of her perfume lingering in the air, as if even that was in a hurry to follow her out. She had chosen him. A man I'd never met until his name began slipping into her sentences, casual at first, then unavoidable. Suddenly I wasn't enough, not exciting, not ambitious in the right way. He had a car I couldn't afford, stories I couldn't compete with, and promises that sounded brighter than the life we had quietly built together. When she finally admitted it, her words were almost rehearsed. "You're steady, but he makes me feel alive." I had been paying most of the rent, covering the bills when her hours at work fell short, doing the laundry she left piled on the chair by the window. I thought love was made from these small, patient acts. She saw them as invisible, forgettable. That night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at 2 wine glasses, one still smudged with her lipstick. The chair across from me was empty, and it struck me how quickly absence rearranges a room. It was humiliating, realizing I had been compared and found lacking, as if loyalty could be weighed against adrenaline. But I didn't chase her. I didn't beg. I just listened to the silence filling the apartment, and understood it was the first honest thing between us in months. The first week after she left, I lived in a haze that felt both sharp and dull at the same time. Sharp in the mornings, when I'd wake up expecting to hear the shower running, the faint splash of water against tiles. Dull in the evenings, when the apartment stretched into a cavern of silence, and I'd catch myself glancing at the empty chair across the table as if it might explain itself. I didn't cry, not in the dramatic sense. My grief came in smaller shapes: the untouched second coffee mug, the laundry basket that stayed half full, the muted phone that no longer buzzed with her messages asking me to pick up milk or bread. Each absence reminded me of how much of our life had been woven from routines I maintained without thinking. At first, I tried to fill the space. I turned on the TV, let the noise play through the rooms. I went out for long walks, stopping by the corner cafe where we used to sit together. The barista noticed her absence but said nothing, just slid me my usual cup with a pitying look I pretended not to see. It didn't take long before a kind of clarity emerged. The silence that hurt on day 1 became revealing by day 10. I began to see the outlines of how much I had carried for us. Rent, utilities, even her student loan payments I had helped cover when she fell behind. The pile of unpaid bills on the counter wasn't new. I had always been the one to tame it into order. Now, with her gone, I realized she had walked out of comfort she never built herself. There was anger, but it simmered quietly, never boiling. I didn't rage against her or him. Instead, I folded the anger into distance. I stopped checking her social media, stopped imagining them together. If anything, I began rehearsing a life without her in it. I bought groceries for one, rearranged the furniture, and slept diagonally across the bed just because I could. Friends reached out, cautiously, offering drinks or distractions. I declined most of them. It wasn't that I wanted isolation, but I needed the silence to teach me something. To show me the difference between losing someone you love and realizing you were already carrying their weight alone. One night, I found myself standing in front of the closet. Half the hangers were bare now, gaps where her dresses used to hang. For the first time, I didn't see loss in those empty spaces. I saw possibility. The air in the apartment was lighter. The imbalance was finally visible, and I wasn't ashamed anymore. By the end of that month, I wasn't retreating in weakness. I was retreating like someone pulling back from a fire, realizing I had no obligation to keep burning. The retreat gave me quiet. Strategy required focus. I didn't map it out like some cinematic revenge plot. No corkboard with red strings or whispered vows in the mirror. My approach was smaller, more deliberate. Step by step, I began to untangle the web we had built together. The first thread was money. Our bank account had both our names on it, though I had been the one feeding it regularly. I went to the branch on a gray Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where rain smeared the windows and the city moved slower. I remember the clerk's polite tone as I requested to unlink the account. "Are you sure?" she asked, as if detaching myself from her financially was as drastic as divorce papers. I nodded. By the time I left, I had my own account set up, clean and separate. Then came the bills. Gas, electricity, internet. 4 years, I had been the one logging in each month, punching in numbers, covering what her inconsistent paychecks couldn't. Now, I changed passwords, updated addresses, quietly cut the tether. She had left with the idea that she was leaving me. She didn't realize she had also left behind the scaffolding that kept her life steady. I sold the second-hand sofa we bought together, the one she always claimed as hers, when we had friends over. Watching strangers carry it down the stairs felt like lifting a weight off my chest. I used the money to buy a smaller one, firm and practical. The apartment began to look less like ours and more like mine. Through all of this I stayed silent. No calls. No emails. I didn't even send the obligatory, "I left your mail on the counter" text. Let her wonder where the ground beneath her feet had gone. Meanwhile I built routines. Not grand gestures of moving on, but steady rituals. I went to the gym twice a week. I learned to cook simple meals instead of reheating leftovers or waiting on takeout. I bought a notebook and began writing down expenses, something she used to mock me for as old-fashioned. In those neat columns of figures I found control. Word reached me indirectly about her new life. A mutual friend mentioned seeing them at a restaurant, she laughing too loudly, him waving a credit card around like it was a stage prop. Another time, someone let slip that she had moved into his apartment, a place with a balcony and a view she had always claimed to want. I let the information pass over me like wind. They believed they were flourishing. Good. Let them. What they didn't see was the slow withdrawal of my presence in ways they had taken for granted. Her old phone plan had still been under my name. I canceled it without ceremony. The shared streaming account? Gone. Even the small things like the laundry basket she'd left behind, I tossed out. Every object she might have leaned on was erased or replaced. There was no announcement. No confrontation. Just absence. I became a blank space in her life, one she couldn't refill with noise or excitement. At work, colleagues noticed the change in me. One remarked that I looked lighter, less tense. I realized they were right. The act of pulling back, of reclaiming my independence, had given me something better than anger. It gave me dignity. Still, I didn't move recklessly. My strategy wasn't about punishing her directly, it was about making sure when the cracks appeared in her new world, she would find nothing left to hold on to from the old one. And I knew the cracks would come. People like him, men who shine too brightly too quickly, always reveal their shadows eventually. Charm curdles into arrogance, spontaneity into recklessness. She had traded steady ground for fireworks, and fireworks burn out. So I waited. Patiently. Quietly. Secure in the knowledge that when the smoke cleared, I would be standing where I had always been, steady, unshaken, and free. The first hint of their unraveling came in whispers. Mutual friends, the kind who couldn't resist passing along tidbits of gossip, started mentioning small cracks in their picture-perfect life. At first, it was almost nothing. She showed up late to a birthday dinner without him, excusing his absence with a tight smile. He was spotted at a bar on a Tuesday night, flirting a little too freely. I listened quietly, not encouraging, not discouraging. Information always finds its way to the one who waits. By then, I had already learned to live without her. My apartment felt settled, clean in its solitude. I had established a rhythm. Early mornings with coffee and a book, evenings with steady work and quiet reflection. The empty chair at the dinner table no longer accused me, it simply existed. I could pass it without flinching. She, on the other hand, was learning how expensive excitement could be. I heard she quit her part-time job not long after moving in with him, assuming his income would cover them both. It didn't. The man who once flashed his card like a badge of superiority turned out to be less stable than advertised. His late-night bar tabs piled up, his debts whispered their way into her reality. A mutual acquaintance told me they fought in public once, outside a cafe we used to frequent together. She shouted something about promises, while he laughed it off, lighting a cigarette with deliberate nonchalance. I imagined her face, red with embarrassment, as people turned to watch. For someone who left me because I was too steady, she was now living inside the chaos she once claimed to crave. Meanwhile, the bills she had abandoned began finding her. I'd removed my name from everything months ago, but some companies still sent statements to her old address. One evening, I opened the mailbox and found an envelope with her name, overdue payments in bold red letters. I slid it back inside and left it there, untouched. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. Soon enough she called me. The number flashed across my screen, unfamiliar at first until I recognized it. A new phone plan probably under his name. I didn't answer. She tried again the next day, leaving a voicemail, her voice strained, almost brittle. I just need to talk. Please call me back. I didn't. Silence was the only language left between us. Her laughter, once carefree, grew quieter in the stories that trickled back to me. Friends described her as tired, thinner, her eyes darting when his name came up. He, on the other hand, seemed unaffected, louder if anything. Someone mentioned he had been seen with another woman, arms slung casually around her shoulder. The details didn't matter. What mattered was the inevitability of it all. The collapse wasn't a single dramatic explosion. It was erosion. Piece by piece, her foundation gave way. Rent overdue. Utilities cut off briefly when he forgot to pay. She started borrowing money from friends, small amounts, enough to keep her afloat. But pride has sharp edges. She couldn't admit, at least not yet, that she had chosen poorly. One evening, long after I had stopped waiting for it, I ran into her. It was at the grocery store of all places. She was standing in the frozen aisle, staring at a bag of vegetables as if it held answers. When she saw me, her lips parted but no words came out. I noticed her coat, once expensive looking, now frayed at the sleeves. She tried to smile but it wavered. "Hi," she said softly, as though we were acquaintances instead of former lovers. I nodded, calm. "Hi." There was a pause so heavy it felt like the air between us might crack. She wanted to explain. I could see it in the way she shifted her weight, in the nervous clutch of the basket in her hands. But explanations would have meant reopening doors I had already closed. So I excused myself with a simple, "Take care," and walked away. I didn't look back, but I could feel her eyes on me, burning with regret or longing or maybe just the recognition of a life she had abandoned. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the same empty chair that had haunted me months ago. But this time it wasn't an emblem of loss. It was a quiet victory. She had chosen excitement over stability, illusion over reality. And reality had caught up. I knew then that her collapse was not mine to manage, not mine to cushion. She was living the consequences of her own choices, and I was simply the witness. And though part of me pitied her, a larger part understood something deeper. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply surviving better without the person who doubted you. I always imagined that if we ever faced each other again, really faced each other, not in passing at a grocery store, it would be loud. Tears, accusations, maybe even shouting. But when the moment came, it was quieter, heavier, the way air thickens before a storm. It happened on a Sunday morning. I was leaving the apartment with a bag of laundry when I saw her at the bottom of the stairwell. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't pretending. She just stood there, hands tucked into her sleeves as if she had been waiting for hours. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her voice breaking on the last word. I set the laundry down and studied her. The woman in front of me wasn't the same one who had walked out months ago, dragging her suitcase with confidence. She looked smaller, as though the world had pressed down on her shoulders. Dark circles hollowed her eyes, her hair pulled back in haste. "What do you want?" I asked, calm, almost detached. For a moment she couldn't answer. Tears threatened but she fought them back, swallowing hard. "He ruined everything," she whispered finally. "Everything he promised, it was all a lie." She told me fragments of her story, the words spilling in uneven bursts. He had debts far worse than she imagined. The balcony and the view had come with unpaid bills hidden in drawers. His charm soured quickly into cruelty, belittling her, mocking her, disappearing for days. And then there were the other women. Always just friends, but she had caught messages, seen photos. "I thought I mattered to him," she said, her voice cracking. "But I was just," she broke off, covering her face. I didn't rush to comfort her. I leaned against the railing, arms crossed, listening. There was no satisfaction in her pain, but there was a strange justice in it. She had traded stability for illusion, and illusion had turned on her. "You left me for him," I said finally, "because he made you feel alive." Her eyes lifted, filled with shame. "I know. I was wrong." The words hung between us, fragile, almost pitiful. Wrong didn't cover the months of silence, the humiliation of being compared and discarded. Wrong didn't erase the nights I sat alone, listening to the echo of her absence. "I can't fix what's broken there," she said softly. "But I thought maybe you could forgive me." Forgive. The word pressed against me like a weight. She wanted absolution, a way to wash her hands of her mistake, to be welcomed back into the steadiness she once mocked. I shook my head slowly. "You didn't just leave me. You dismantled what we had piece by piece before you ever walked out the door. Forgiveness doesn't rebuild that." She stepped closer, desperate now. "Please. You don't understand how much I've lost. He took everything. I have nothing left." And there it was, the truth. She wasn't here because she loved me. She was here because I represented safety, because in my silence and steadiness, I had become the opposite of the chaos she had chosen. I thought about all the nights I had paid the bills, folded her laundry, carried the invisible weight of our life. She had called it dull. Now she called it everything she needed. "I do understand," I said, my voice even. You lost because you gambled with something real for something that never existed. Her tears spilled then freely. She reached for me but I stepped back. The air between us was charged, a battlefield with no weapons but words. I'm not the same man you left, I continued. I don't need you the way I once did. You chose him. You live with that choice. She shook her head violently, her voice breaking into sobs. Don't do this. Please. Don't leave me like this. But I wasn't leaving her. She had left me long ago. All I was doing now was refusing to reopen the door she had slammed shut. We stood in silence, the sound of her crying filling the stairwell. A neighbor passed by, glancing curiously, but I didn't move. Eventually, she sank onto the bottom step, exhausted, clutching her sleeves like they were the only thing holding her together. I picked up my laundry bag and said quietly, "Take care of yourself." Then I walked past her, down the stairs, out into the cold morning air. I didn't look back. That was the confrontation, not a battle of screams, but the quiet destruction of whatever hope she had left. And in that silence I realized something. I had won not by fighting, but by refusing to fight at all. After the stairwell, things changed. Not for me, my life kept moving with the same steady rhythm I had built, but for her. She began orbiting me again, drawn not by love but by necessity, by the stark contrast between the chaos she chose and the stability she had thrown away. It started with small gestures. A text message from an unfamiliar number, "I hope you're okay." I didn't reply. A week later, another, "I've been thinking about everything. Can we talk?" Silence was my answer. She stopped by the cafe we used to visit, lingering at the doorway as if hoping I'd invite her over. I nodded politely and kept reading my book. The reversal was almost cruel in its simplicity. She had once treated me as invisible, and now she was the one unseen. For the first time I held the power. Not because I sought it but because I no longer needed her. She was stripped of illusions. No balcony view, no charming promises, and I had rebuilt myself without her. One evening she caught me leaving the building again. This time she didn't cry. She looked tired, worn down to the edges, her voice quiet. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't expect you to take me back. I just needed you to know." The words, once unimaginable from her, landed gently. They didn't sting, didn't soothe. They simply existed. I realized then that forgiveness wasn't something she could claim, it was something I could choose to give or withhold, and withholding it no longer fueled me. I didn't need revenge in flames. I had it in quiet control. "I hear you," I said. Nothing more. She nodded, eyes wet, then walked away. And for the first time I didn't feel anger or pity. I felt free. In the weeks that followed she tried again, more humbly each time. An offer to return a sweater of mine she had kept. A suggestion we could meet just for closure. But each attempt fell into the silence I held firm. The more she tried, the more she seemed to shrink, while I expanded into the life I had carved without her. It was then I understood the shift fully. She had become the one left behind. Her regret weighed heavier than my loss ever had. She was looking at me the way I had once looked at her, desperate, searching for signs of softness, for cracks in the wall. And I had none to give. I didn't hate her. Hate would have kept me tied to her. What I felt instead was distance, the kind that turns memory into a story you tell rather than a wound you carry. One night, I sat again at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair. This time, I raised my glass not to mourn her absence but to toast my own endurance. She had left me convinced she was stepping into a better life. But the truth had played out differently. Her better life had collapsed and mine had quietly rebuilt itself into something stronger. The chair remained empty and that was the point. It was no longer waiting to be filled. The roles were reversed and she finally knew it. Life didn't erupt into fireworks after her collapse. It didn't need to. My revenge, if that word even fits, was quiet, steady, almost invisible from the outside. But I felt it in every small act of normalcy. I paid my bills on time, cooked my dinners, read books in the silence that once felt unbearable. The apartment no longer echoed with loss, it resonated with calm. Evenings passed without drama, without accusations or apologies, just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak of the floorboards. She lingered at the edges of my life for a while. A message every month or so, never demanding, always circling the same unspoken hope that I might allow her back. I never did. Eventually the attempts dwindled, until silence reclaimed its rightful place between us. And in that silence I realized the truth. Revenge wasn't about seeing her suffer. It wasn't about gloating when her new life crumbled. The truest revenge was that I had survived without her. More than survived, I had grown. She had gambled everything on a man who dazzled briefly and burned out fast. I had chosen patience, and patience gave me peace. The recurring image that stayed with me was the empty chair at the dinner table. At first it mocked me, then it challenged me, and finally, it became my proof. Proof that I could live without filling it, that my life didn't require her presence to be complete. Sometimes late at night I thought about her. Not with anger, not even with longing, but with the kind of detached curiosity you feel when recalling a stranger you once knew intimately. Her laughter, her perfume, her carelessness, all of it belonged to another life, a closed chapter. The door remained closed. And I no longer stood on the other side of it, waiting. My revenge was never a spectacle. It was dignity. It was absence. It was the life I rebuilt, quiet and steady, while hers fell apart. And in the end that was enough.